Wonderful. So you did some demographics and things then about Forks, and got some information about the people and what's happening there in Forks.
That's correct. What led us to Forks was in 2011, I was kind of encouraged by the director of church planning in the Bible Fellowship Church that each region in the denomination would consider planning a daughter church. So I gathered together various pastors from Bible Fellowship churches in the Lehigh Valley and just wanted to get a consensus whether other churches would be on board with this, and they were. So then we just began to look at some of the fastest growing municipalities in the Lehigh Valley, which led us to Forks. Forks Township grew about 75% between the census in 2000 and the census in 2010.
75%?
75%, from approximately 8,000 plus to 14,000 plus. So, wow. And if you drive through there today, you can see how the developments have exploded, and you can see where the population increase came from. But that alone wasn't the determining factor. We also looked at churches in those municipalities, and Forks has very few churches actually within the township borders. There are only about 3. And so those two factors, the population increase and the lack of churches there with a vibrant gospel witness, led us to plant a church there.
Yeah. Well, we know there are certainly plenty of unreached people everywhere. I heard a statistic one time, something to the effect that if every church in a given city were filled 4 times every Sunday morning, you would still only reach about 25% of the people that are there. So there's plenty of people that need to hear the gospel, and I'm sure that will be a thriving area for you.
Yes, and even here in the Lehigh Valley, we have a lot of good, solid churches. And I think many people might look around and say, well, these churches are enough, but in reality, they're not. Another statistic I came across from 2001, that the Lehigh Valley is the 11th least reached metropolitan area in the United States.
The least reached?
The least reached, yes.
Wow.
So we have a lot of work to do.
Compared to the populations and the number of churches, et cetera?
That's correct. Correct.
Wow. Okay. Tim, what are some of your plans, reaching real people with real hope? What are some of your plans, and how are you going to go about starting the church and, you know, getting a team together? I mean, you'll talk a little bit probably more about your team, your support team, but how do you go about starting a church?
Well, the number one thing is actually moving into the community that you're trying to reach. My family moved here from Hellertown July 1, so we've been here 2 months now. And as a church planner, you're just trying to make connections into the community. Much like a missionary going overseas, I'm really trying to approach the community in Forks as a learner, because I realize it is a different culture than Hellertown. So I want to come in and try to discover what are the rhythms in this community, what are people about, where do people gather. So I'm spending time driving around, trying to understand the community, trying to talk with people, continue with surveys just to find out spiritual receptivity. So trying to make a lot of contacts, getting involved in the community, serving. I already alluded to coaching a soccer team, playing soccer with men and women my age. So this gives you avenues to all sorts of relational networks in the community. So community involvement is a big part of it, because one of the challenges you face as a church plant is you don't have trust and respect of the community. You're this new entity. A church such as yourself, where you pastor, you're well known in the community, but a church like mine, we're not known. So we have to spend a lot of time to build that trust and respect. So we have outreaches planned. We have our biggest outreach coming up next weekend at Forks Community Days. We have a display there where we're just promoting our ministries, just helping people to get to know who we are, to help build that trust and respect.
So at this point, you actually are not holding worship services as such. You're still laying the foundation, so to speak, before you begin that. Do you have a projected time when you hope to have public services?
Yeah, that is correct. Right now we're working on building a following, as someone said. So we're hoping to begin worship services on a weekly basis September of next year, 2015.
Okay, in just about a year.
That's correct. So it takes some time to get these systems into place and to build build a following. One of the things that church planners have discovered, and I've been informed about this through my reading and talking to church planners, that if you start small, if you launch small, you end up staying small, and you end up birthing prematurely. Just as a baby born prematurely struggles to survive, a church launched or born prematurely struggles to survive as well. So we want to have that critical mass in place before we begin holding worship services.
Exactly. It's interesting that through the years, God has put me in traditional churches, much more traditional. I was in Boston. I went to Gordon Conwell Seminary, and I pastored a church in Melrose, which is in the Boston area. And then I went to Buffalo, and then I came to Bethlehem. So, but they're all been established churches. My present church is 103 years old. We moved into our new facility on Green Pond Road on our 100th anniversary. So God really blessed us with a marvelous blessing in getting into a new facility to have an expanded ministry. But I've been challenged through the years to consider church planting. But as I prayed about it and considered my gifts and abilities and how God had used me, I never felt called to it. I mean, I would have done it had He called me, but God has called you. But I would imagine, let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges of starting a new church, because there are many.
Yes, there are many. One is just logistics. I mean, we're not here yet, but we did this at my previous church, Saucon Community Bible Fellowship Church. The logistics of setting up week after week, because most likely as a church plant, you're renting space. So you have to set up chairs every week, set up sound system, and that's a lot of work. We did that for many, many years. And it just begins to wear on the people. And of course, we can take that for granted in many of the churches we are a part of today. You know, it does take time to accomplish all these things, and so that's just one simple challenge. The second biggest challenge, I would say, and I've already alluded to this, is just gaining the trust and respect of the community. I mean, let's face it, we live in an increasingly hostile culture, a culture that's hostile to Christianity. I think a culture that's more suspicious of Christianity more than ever. So that's working against us too, which is why I think it's really big as a church plant and a church planner to really go into a community with the posture of Jesus Christ, that I'm coming in here to serve you. I'm not looking to be served. And that's huge. And I find that begins to break down a lot of barriers, and that takes some time. Amen. It might take several years.
Tim, but let's talk now a little bit about some of the joys, because I can think of some of the joys, and I want you to enumerate them, but there are many joys in starting a new church. What are some of them?
Well, I think one of the biggest joy is seeing people come to faith, and you know, we all like to see that happen at once. And it's been my experience at my previous church, and I'm sure it's probably going to be the same here. Not necessarily with all the conversions, but I would say with most, is it's going to take time. And just seeing the faithfulness of God and the patience of God, seeing Him bless the commitment to people, and just walking with them and talking with them, like Jesus did on the road to Emmaus in Luke 24. I think that has to be our approach with people today, just really trying to understand and help them see that they're placing their hope in the wrong thing, and getting them to place their hope in Jesus. To me, that's the biggest joy. Yes. And the second one is seeing this vision of a church plant become a reality, because right now a lot of the vision is on paper.
Right.
And it's just this idea, but when years down the road, when that begins to come to fulfillment, and it's going to be adjusted and massaged, but when that comes to fulfillment, that's just very rewarding, very rewarding.
And Tim, think of the joy also, I'm sure you have, but just the joy of being able to help shape that church from the very beginning, working on the Constitution, working on a mission statement, a vision statement. What is it that are going to be your top priorities? What are your marching orders? And you have the opportunity to shape that. It's not like coming into an existing church where the Constitution and vision and all these things are already established, and you kind of fit in and try to take the church further than what's gone before. But I think that would be really thrilling to be able to shape.
Yeah, it is, and I think what was helpful with my experience in the culinary field is I listened a lot to non-Christians' objections to Christianity, and many times their critiques were spot on. So I've been trying to learn from those things and trying to foster an atmosphere in the church where instead of repelling non-Christians, we're being a magnet for them, just like Jesus was to the tax collectors and sinners.
And what did Jesus say in John 12:32? If I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me.
That's right.
So we lift up Christ in what we preach, what we teach, how we live, and let Him draw the people. And it's all of God.
Yeah.
We're just instruments. We just got to be humble so He can use us, and pure and clean so He can work through us. And He will, and He does. Now, Tim, real quickly, we only have about 1 more minute, but you have a support team. You've got some couples, you've got some family units or individuals that are really committed along with you to start this church.
That's right. I have a great nucleus of people that are from some of these other Bible fellowship churches in the Lehigh Valley, and they're very supportive. They're helping me with a lot of this work. I'm not doing this on my own. I'm not a lone ranger wearing a mask trying to accomplish all this, but so they're helping me with personnel and with administrative tasks, with outreach. But I also have financial supporters that are supporting me. I'm much like a missionary, raising my own support. I have a prayer team supporting me as well. So
excellent. We've been putting the website up on the screen, so if people are watching, they may be interested. Maybe some people would like to contact you.
Sure.
Tim, thank you so much for sharing your vision and your heart. May God bless you in Forks Township, and look forward to future contacts with you.
Okay, thank you.